Hey Sun, I'm Daisy Victoria, and welcome back to this series on exploring and experimenting with ancient Egyptian clothing. We've gone through the general clothing portion of the clothing, we've gone through headpieces, and today we're going to look at jewelry. There are so many artifacts of jewelry that we've found in ancient Egyptian tombs. There's no possible way that I can, in a reasonable time, try to recreate all the things I found and accurately depict everything in a true experimental sense. That said, we're going to look at some of the jewelry and I'm going to show you guys how I created a broad collar. Well, the clothing itself was fairly simple throughout dynastic Egypt. They really liked their accessories. The ancient Egyptians loved all types of jewelry. We've got broad collars, necklaces, rings, bracelets, diadems, which we explored in the head coverings video. Just basically everything. They love jewelry. I've been really lucky to be able to see a number of jewelry pieces in museum exhibits, and the last one I went to is the traveling Ramses the Great and the Gold of the Pharaohs. This exhibit has a lot of pieces that are on loan from Cairo, and I did a virtual tour of that museum exhibit, so if you want to see it, I will link that for you. The one piece of jewelry that kind of screams ancient Egypt is the broad collar. This is called the usekh or the wesekh. We see this everywhere, like all throughout the drawings or tomb paintings, all throughout statues. It's just all over the place. And we've uncovered so many of these from tombs. And there's more than just one specific way to make them, though they seem to have a lot in common. That general look, these sort of tube beads placed together in most of the broad collars. And this is something that I wanted to recreate. When I first tried to create an usekh, I did so by placing beads on the little metal pieces that I kind of hooked around the edges, and then I threaded beads through those, and I created my collar that way. So this is a very easy way, actually fairly quick too. Some of the collars that you can buy online are made that way too. This one is just like a regular, you can get it on Amazon type of collar, and it is created using little metal bars full of beads that are looped on the ends, and it has 3 rows of those with strands of beads that go this way in between them. This is a really nice one. There's a few types out there that you can get if you want to buy a broad collar. This is another broad collar that was handmade by an artist in Egypt, and it is made similarly with those little bars of beads. Now, if we look at the usekhs in museums, we notice that they tend to be strung together with linen thread, and the beads are sort of ladder laced in together. I've been wanting to do that and try it out for so long, and I finally did. So today we're going to make this. Now this one has 3 rows of 2 beads that are ladder strung, and then 4 rows of smaller beads in between them, edging them, and then I use some drop beads on the end. We do see a lot of drop beads in some of the extant collars. Sometimes there's another row of beads underneath them as well. To do this collar, I had to learn the beading ladder stitch. You can do this with 2 threads or with 1. I did it with 1. Now, I'm actually not using linen thread here. I am using bonded nylon thread that is often found with the upholstery thread. This is a very strong thread, which you definitely want for this project. So I did lay out the beads first to get the lay of the land on my collar. So to do the ladder stitch, you basically go up into one bead, and then from the top into the next bead. So you're starting your ladder, and then you go back up through the bottom of the first bead, and then skip over that second bead and go into the third, then go up through the second, skip over the third, go into the fourth, go back up through the third, skip the fourth, go into the fifth, and so on. The thread can be tied to itself on either end. When I got to the end, I went back up through the bead before the last one, and then I tied the thread off. So the stitch itself is not really that complex. It's just something you have to learn and try out. And then I think finessing it kind of comes with time. I created 3 ladders, each one subsequently being longer than the one above it. And when I had all of those ladders of beads, I basically sewed them onto rows of smaller beads. So I made the rows of the smaller beads by putting all those small beads onto a strand of thread. And then I basically just sewed them into the ladder. So I started by sewing the top string of beads onto that top ladder, and I went through 2 of the little beads for each stitch, and I tied the thread off at the ends. After I did that, I stitched the next row of little beads onto what I had for the top. Then after that, I stitched the next ladder row onto that little row. After I had the second ladder row attached, I sewed another smaller bead row onto the bottom of that. Then I attached the third and final ladder row onto that smaller bead row, and then I attached another bead row, smaller bead row onto the very bottom. And then I finally tied these little dangly beads onto, I used 2 each of the small beads to tie those on there. For the closure, I used this little bar, like an end bar that you can get in the jewelry section, and I attached a little hook and circle, hook and eye, I guess, closure. We're using sewing terms here, even though it's jewelry, and that works really well. Now, some of the broad collars you see in period have counterweights on the back, and that is because they can get very heavy in the front, and a counterweight will help to make it sit where you want it to. I personally really love my new usekh, way better than my original attempt many moons ago. I would love to try out more and get even better at this technique, but I think it's really cool already, so already I'm excited to wear this. I made myself a matching pair of bracelets. Years ago, I made bracelets for both my upper and lower arm using the same technique I used for that old broad collar with the little bars of beads. For those bracelets, I had used elastic so I could just slide them right onto my arms. For my new bracelets, I used the same little end pieces that I used for my necklace, and I tied strands of beads basically to each of them and used another bar and eye closure. These bracelets have the beads going horizontally over the arm. You also see plenty of bracelets with the beads going vertically, which would be the ladder stitch that I used on the usekh. I created bracelets like that for both my upper and lower arms. Sometimes you also see anklets worn in the paintings, and those could be made similarly as well. So you could make bracelets like this, or you could make them with the ladder stitch the same way I did the usekh. If you want to get started, you want the look without going too crazy or spending a lot of time, you can get bracelets like this on Amazon. And this is just a very easy to wear bracelet. It kind of mimics the look as well. So I like this one because it's very thick and it's all beads. So it definitely looks like a lot of Egyptian bracelets that we have found. Not all of the bracelets are beads, there are metal ones. I have found some metal bracelets that I've used to kind of approximate this look as well. Personally, I'm happier with my beaded ones right now because I think that they look a little bit better. I guess there's just like a little bit more of a quality they have to them versus the cheaper metallic ones that I have found. But if you find a good metallic one, or if you are a metal worker and you can make your own metallic one, there are lots of options for that as well based on what we have found. There are also lots of other necklaces that have been found throughout ancient Egypt. You can approximate these with various beads that you put together yourself, or you can also purchase some enameled pieces. There's lots of amulets and all kinds of things. There's an abundance of jewelry in ancient Egypt. Another thing we see that I'm going to go ahead and put into jewelry is the waist chains, or the sort of beaded belts. I was so lucky to see a couple of these at the Ramses the Great exhibit in person, and they're really cool. Another thing we see is really cool chains done by wire weaving. So I actually recently learned to do wire weaving, and I'm working on my very first project. So I'm weaving it around this pencil. I didn't know all that much about ancient Egyptian wire weaving until I went to the Ramses the Great exhibit after learning to do Viking wire weaving myself. This is Viking age wire weaving. This one was made by basically my second mom, and this is found throughout the Viking age. It's virtually identical to the wire weaving found in the ancient Egyptian artifacts that I saw in the Ramses exhibit. And when I made that connection, I was just super duper excited. If you guys continue to explore and experiment with Egyptian jewelry, I'd love to see some of the things that you come up with. There's like tons and tons of options here. So this is probably going to be a huge ongoing experiment, but I'm so glad that I figured out how to make the usekh. I've been looking at these in museums for a long time, trying to figure out how I could make one that really was like those ones that I had seen. And I really love the results of this. I'm so excited to have this usekh. Finally, it's like a dream project, and I'm excited to wear it with my ancient Egyptian clothing so I can really recreate this persona. If you've enjoyed this dive into experimenting with ancient clothing, go ahead and like the video. It really helps me out. Make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you see everything else I post here. I will be wearing some of my ancient Egyptian clothing to Penzik, which is a big reenactment camping event that's coming up. I'll also be wearing my ancient Minoan clothing and some other stuff, so come back if you want to see that. You can find me on all the social medias as Daisy Victoria. My website is daisyvictoria.com. A special thank you to my patrons over on Patreon who help me so much and get exclusive content like extra progress photos, write-ups, pictures, all kinds of stuff. To all my friends out there, do something today that makes you happy. Think of something you're grateful for and be kind to yourself. I hope you have an absolutely magical day, and I will see you again real soon. Bye-bye.